We have to say, okay, Michael, you're on your own for 16 bars, and then you've got to come back.
Land the plane.
Yeah.
4, 3, 2, 1.
We gotta work on the problems. We gotta link up to solve them. We gotta keep on evolving. Gotta be side by side. Give it up. Gotta be side by side. Everyone. Gotta be side by side. Yeah. We gotta be side by side. Gotta be side by side. We gotta be side by side. Everyone. Gotta be side by side.
Welcome to Talks to Tatum. This is the Side by Side podcast, and I'm so happy that you tuned in. And today we got a really, really special one. I've been saying that a lot, but every single one is uniquely special in their relationship to me. And this one is a banger. It's a doozy. So if you've got a seatbelt, buckle yourself in here because we're going to go all the way there. But today we got Tom Brintnall with us, and two stories to start out. So first, I remember the first time I ever saw you, ever met you, if you remember this, but we'd come to Broadway to visit. And we went to the traditional service at first, and then one day we decided to go to the contemporary service. And I was stoked, right? Like, okay, there's drums, there's guitars, the whole thing. And then there's a guy up there, and he's bald, and he's got a guitar, beautiful guitar. And he's wearing, before it was a popular thing, he's wearing one of the Countrymen wireless microphones. And I'm like, this dude's a rock star. Like, he's doing like a straight up concert. Like, this is like Clapton or something up here on the acoustic guitar. And you're playing and you're leading. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is the Tom, Ed, and Terry show, you know? And shining through the middle of all of that is this bald guy who's no longer bald. This beard and these glasses. And he's so intently focused. Do you remember those days when that was your jam?
Yeah, I do kind of. And I was thinking on the drive up here when I was remembering when we did a youth group, music group, and you and Hannah and all of them were in there. And I loved that. That was great. Music. I do remember the times when I was bald. I mean, when I shaved my head.
I'm sure that this is some type of surgery that you've had that's magically made the hair grow back. It's miracle
I'll tell you what. I'd get my hair cut, and I just kept getting it cut shorter and shorter and shorter, and it was just buzzed. And I thought, I think I'm going to try shaving it, and I did. I liked it for a while. You know, I did that for a while, and then.
Let it grow back.
Got tired.
Well, it suits you. It suits you.
Thank you.
So the second story is once I'd gotten ingrained in Broadway and I understood what the music looked like in those things, there's that youth band. And at this point, I'm not playing music. I don't know how to do anything. You know, I briefly played drums or something as a young person. And as we start High Rise version 2, there were all of these grumblings everywhere. There's these rumors about Tom and how he leads, and Tom and his intenseness about the music. He wants it to be done right. And I remember one time sitting in with the ensemble, and it just happened to be one of those rehearsals where you were like, we're gonna get it right. And I was like, oh gosh, maybe I am afraid of Tom. Where does that desire to get things right, you know, to do it the way that you practiced it, to actually put in the work to do things right, where does that come from?
Yeah, you know, I'm not really sure. That's there certainly. I suppose I could look back in childhood and find examples, you know, but I don't know. It just really bothers me for me to put in the time. I want to do it as well as I can possibly do it. Yeah. And that isn't just coming in on Sunday morning and winging it. That just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
So, it just always bothered me that I put in the time to work this stuff up. We do a rehearsal. We're supposed to work through those things and be able to, get it right. And then nobody else did. So it always aggravated me.
Well, I think you got a bad rap, from my perspective, certainly of like, that's just accountability, right? And in the worship space, we kind of have these kid gloves sometimes where it's like, let's not hold people accountable, but it's not a performance, but it's an offering to God, right?
Right.
And we want to do it right, and we want to do it with intentionality because we're stewards of that. And so you're putting in the time and the effort, and that's a fair expectation all around.
Well, I think so too. And I think if you took that expectation and directed it towards whoever was presenting the message, and if they just got up there and ad-libbed and would wing it on Sunday morning and weren't very good, you wouldn't accept that.
Yeah.
Not for very long. I mean, you might if you're bringing in somebody everybody loved and you go, okay, well, it's, that's
Right.
them. But on a long-term basis, you're not going to accept that. And I don't see why you need to do that, accept that with the music.
Yeah. And I mean, that definitely permeated getting to see that, that standard of excellence and that expectation of like, you don't have to be perfect, you don't have to have the best voice or the best skills or any of those things, but you need to be prepared. That translated very much to me in my leadership of High Rise and not knowing all this stuff all the time, but being intentional about we're going to be prepared, because in that space between knowing the music and actually being in worship, when you're prepared, you can let the Spirit flow, right? You can be fully present and you're not worried about, oh, there's a change in here somewhere and I don't know what it is,
Right.
So I love that. And so I appreciate you for kind of setting that expectation. So we got to go all the way back. Guitar. And obviously you have a long history of music and playing music, but when do you remember kind of guitar sticking out to you and saying, hey, I want to learn that thing?
Well, I was in junior high, probably 7th grade, back before they had middle schools, junior high. And I had a good friend that lived a block away or so who was a musician. He was several years older than I was. He played upright bass, and his family had a Simca car, which is a fairly small car, and he was able to get that upright bass into that car. It was amazing. So he had a guitar, and he was, his folks were involved in a small church. This was in the middle of Iowa, and he wanted me to learn play guitar so that I could go with him to this church and do stuff there. So he had a guitar that I think it was his aunt's, and it was just a cheap guitar, and none of the tuning pegs had heads on them. So I had to carry a pair of pliers in the case to be able to tune this guitar.
Wow.
So that's what I learned on. And then just kept playing. He eventually moved away. I got involved. I had several friends that went to the Methodist church, and there was some music there, and a young, hip minister that was there. And so a bunch of us got together and did a group there. I played guitar, and we do occasional Sundays there, and we went to another church in town and did the whole service one time. So that's kind of my story on the guitar.
And so at this point of doing worship with guitars, I mean, this has got to be really early on in that kind of movement of that introduction. So you're playing hymns? Are you playing like Gaither kind of stuff? You're playing like...
Man, I don't know, Michael. That was so long ago. We were doing something, and we called it contemporary. So whatever
the name
it was,
has stuck.
that was probably that was the late '60s, I guess.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. So we called ourselves the Melodiers.
Melodiers.
Yeah,
And you have an affection for group names, with the wig trimmers to come much later. So I also heard a rumor over these years that you've really only ever owned or really purchased these two acoustic guitars. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've only had two. Yeah.
And they're not just like Sears catalog acoustic guitars. I mean, your first guitar is what?
Well, the first one I sold to my sister-in-law so that I could afford to buy it. The one that I that I really wanted. It was a Gibson B25, sweet guitar. It really great tone, and I bought that in my hometown. It was used.
That's a lifer guitar for somebody, right there.
Yeah, it is. And the problem for me was that it's a medium-sized guitar, so it just didn't have the volume acoustically. So, and for some reason, I really wanted a Martin guitar, and so I couldn't actually outright buy one. I had to get money, so I sold the Gibson. And there was a summer I was working. This was when I was in college, and all the money that I made that summer was going towards this guitar.
Wow.
So I got the Martin D35, and it's the only acoustic I've ever had or wanted.
How lucky of you! You know, I've went through this whole journey over all these years of trying to find the best budget acoustic guitar. You know, that's the land that I live in. Not quite to the Martin splurge yet. And it's kind of funny how some of those first guitars that you get end up being the ones that really stick. Like my main acoustic that I play the most is probably it was the second acoustic guitar I ever bought. And I just bought it online somewhere. I think I bought it on eBay online from somebody, sight unseen, never played it. And that's been my favorite with, 10 plus guitars bought afterwards. That's the one I always go back to.
Yeah.
So it's weird. But that your guitar's special.
It is.
And you've done work on it over the years, putting new pickups and some of that stuff in.
Yeah, I put in pickups. I've had the neck reset once. That kind of stuff.
But this is
I played it
lifer.
hard in college, so it's showing somewhere. But
what was your as you're kind of growing up and you're developing your guitar stuff early on? What are your kind of influences? Are you like heavily into James Taylor and this kind of stuff, or where's it coming
pretty
from?
much James Taylor, Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Yeah.
So that kind of folky acoustic.
Bob Dylan stuff at all?
I'm not
so much?
really a fan of Dylan. It's sort of Dylan and Elvis Presley. I can appreciate their contributions in the history of music. I just don't want to listen to them myself.
That's fair.
So,
That's fair.
It's okay.
I get it. Crosby, Crosby, Nash, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Very good. How much Springsteen or any of that kind of stuff later on? Or
not so much.
Just more on the folk side.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when was the point that you bought an electric guitar for the first time?
That was not that long ago, actually. I never really thought the music that I was playing didn't really. I mean, there certainly could be electric guitar elements, but I wasn't really paying attention to those. Just doing acoustic. So it was I've had it probably, I don't know, 8 years or so, something like that.
And you've seen how easy it is to fall off the deep end with pedals and all the...
Yeah. And I kind of go through phases where I'll think, oh, man, I need to get that electric out and play that and, power up some pedals and see, and then they kind of, then I need to actually do something, so I go back to the acoustic. So I like the electric too.
Yeah. It's one of the other things about you that was always rumored And I feel like there's so many rumors.
Many rumors.
There's so many rumors. There's a whole underground Bash Tom movement, and was always, and I may have heard this once, but it was always your disdain for electric guitar and a second guitarist in a band. But then in my experience, has never been a thing.
Yeah.
So where do you think, where did that come from, this idea that you were like against those things?
I don't know where that came from. I mean, I love having, when you play electric in our group, I love that. That's great. I think from the standpoint of two guitars, unless you are intentional about what those two guitars are going to play, they can end up being, sort of taking away from each other by doing the same thing. You don't really need two guitars doing the same thing.
Yeah.
It's sort of the same, the guitar playing in the same range as the keyboard. I mean, you're going to lose some stuff there. So, I'll try to maybe capo up and play a little higher than the keyboard, or ask the keyboard player to do something different. For doing arpeggios, both the keyboard and the guitar don't need to be doing arpeggios because they're not going to be together, and you don't need that much. So I mean, I could see, having two acoustics, and one acoustic is doing more lead stuff on an acoustic song.
Well,
but I think having guitars are great.
That's definitely something that I've picked up about you specifically, because lots of people lead, right? And lots of people play guitar or whatever, and I'm a worship leader or whatever that looks like. But your background and your understanding of music is very different than just, I'm going to sit up here and play guitar and I'm going to work through these chords and sing the songs. It's very much, I mean, obviously there's the music director piece of it, but there's also this component of like, really, you're producing a song. And so every song is looked at from this perspective of, it's a track, and what are the components that we need, and what are the empty spaces that need to be filled, and how do we flush this thing all the way through? So I've seen that as you work up songs, you're constantly thinking about what does it need versus being dead set on, this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
How much of that comes from your involvement and band and stuff as a younger person, handbells, that kind of stuff? Is that where that mentality comes from?
Probably, yeah. I've got 5 siblings. They all played instruments. My mom played some piano, although not a whole lot. My dad, I think, had some innate musicality, but didn't really play an instrument. But he would, when we practiced, he would, I don't know if you're familiar with a nose whistle. It's a plastic thing. You put it up, you kind of hum, and it kind of makes this whistling noise. Maybe you can control the pitches. He would sit in on practices, and like if it was a familiar tune to him, he'd play and like maybe do harmonies along with whatever we were practicing. So I played the trumpet. Started playing in 6th grade, I guess, and played all through high school, and did a little bit in college, and then didn't stop. But I think a lot of that, I think in terms of, I played, there was a concert band. We had a really good jazz band that I played in, did that. So I think, and especially in the jazz band, where there are, you've got different sections of instruments, and they're complementing each other, or they're taking leads and, being supported by some of the others.
Yeah.
So I think, I think I had a pretty good basic musical education leading up to doing church music. And then I guess, leading into the production stuff and doing some of that.
Is it a conscious thought as you're playing or you're working through something where you're constantly sitting in front of yourself in your mind and saying, ooh, that doesn't fit. I need to play something else. Are you thinking that way, or is it just something that naturally kind of just flows?
Well, I think about that some. Here the last several years, I'd started to actually record rehearsals and go back and listen to those, because it's a little hard to hear everything when you're playing. You've got ears in and you're listening to yourself, or just have a few other pieces in your ear. So I find that really helpful to be able to go back and listen and sort of critique what we're doing, make suggestions.
Yeah.
And it's a we say this very often in the group that we have. We're doing some contemporary tunes. I mean, groups that are on the radio right now doing these songs, but we don't have to do them exactly like them. So, being able to listen and as you say, that didn't really work. We need to try something a little different here.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things when I was leading, I was really intentional about not listening to contemporary Christian music, like not listening to that radio, not like consuming all the new songs and that stuff. And then I'd go in search of songs, and it would be like fresh to me, because we kind of get ingrained in like these ruts. And when you drive for long enough down the same route, it gets entrenched, and all of a sudden there's no really way out, right? You're stuck in, this is the way that we do it because this is the way that I hear it in my head. And so I was really big on not listening to church music, listening to other music, jazz, and all these other things. And then you bring those components in, and when you hear something, it's not so deeply ingrained in your spirit that it can be fresh and new. And that was always really fun. It was really hard for the group because you hear a song and you just want to replicate that.
Right.
But I mean, who's replicating that?
Right.
I mean, there's a few songs where you're like, I can do that and I can do it better.
Right.
But there's a lot of songs that's like, I'm not gonna. We're not gonna match that.
No. I mean, they're so produced, which is fine, but you don't have the musicians.
Yeah.
In terms of numbers and variety to be able to pull that off. I always looked at, when I would listen to a contemporary song, the recording of a contemporary song that I wanted the group to do, I sort of looked at it as a starting point. I mean, it gave me an idea of what's possible there, and then that had to be translated to what you actually have to work with. You've got these vocalists, you've got these instrumentalists. What can you do here? I mean, and we're not trying to absolutely duplicate the recording, but that kind of gave me a starting point, and then kind of go from there.
I like that. I mean, there's an element to, if this song can't be dumbed down to just an acoustic piano, acoustic guitar, and still have substance and still feel like it moves the needle, then it's probably not a great song.
Right.
So that was kind of the fun part always, was like, let's strip it all the way down, and then we'll build up from here. And if it doesn't have the roots at the beginning, let's not even go down that route.
Right. Okay. Very often I would, spend a lot of time searching. Let's say I had a specific song that it fit the theme of the Sunday. I really, it really spoke to me musically. And I would spend a lot of time then looking for other artists doing that song, or the main recording artist doing it differently. I mean, very often, even with a massively produced recording, those artists will have an acoustic version that they've done. So I'd listen to that, or they've got a live version that they did as opposed to the studio version. So listen to that. There's another artist that did the song and had a little different approach. So, it just gives you some ideas on how you might do it.
Yeah. So one of the benefits of church music, right, is this idea of there's going to be ample other churches that are doing the music. There's going to be lots of live opportunities to kind of plug in. It's not necessarily, we put out this studio production, and it's on the CD, and we never perform live, and nobody ever covers the song. It's like, this is the one version of the song that you can find, right? Which is a good thing. How do you, so obviously you're playing a little bit with your friend in the Methodist church, and you're starting some of that church stuff, but how do you get to a place where you're in leadership at a church for music?
When, after we were married, we moved from Iowa down to Columbia, and my wife had a former professor whose wife was at Missouri Methodist in Columbia.
Okay.
And so she was musical, and so we started, she would do folk sings at their house and, bring friends and guitars and whatever in. And she was at the Methodist church. She was doing children's ministry, I think. So I started doing music there because she was there, and that was sort of my in. And, I pretty much did any of the music programs they ever had there. Kids, all of the children's music at one point, and then handbells there. Then they decided that they wanted to do a contemporary service, so I was involved in starting that, helping start that. So that was really my introduction in what I guess you'd call leading.
What's the contemporary worship challenge as you're starting that, as you're flushing that out? What's the challenge there?
Well, one of the big challenges for me is finding the music, and that would be the case back then. This would have been probably mid 70s, I guess. So the music is out there. It's just finding it, finding the sources and finding stuff that you like so that you can present it to the group, and they can be excited about it.
Much harder back then than now. It's almost cheating now.
Yeah. And then there's always the challenge, I think, with starting a new service in a church with acceptance by the congregation. And, it's one thing if, one of the ministers says, "Oh, I think we ought to do this." And it's another thing to get the support of, majority of the congregation.
Yeah.
So we did that, and that went really well. And they're still doing contemporary service. They've moved it to their new space, I think. But
it's interesting to think about the landscape, right? Like, you're doing this all the way back then, and starting a contemporary service. Did you anticipate that the landscape of churches around the country would still lean so heavily traditional, even after all those years?
I'm not really sure I thought all that much about it. I mean, as long as there was a contemporary service that I could play in, that was okay with me. I wasn't thinking about what the rest of the country was doing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we kept that contemporary service going, and then the Methodist Church and I severed our relationship, not by my choice. Anyway, and so we sort of drifted around. We didn't go to a church for a while, and then happened to run into Terry Overfelt.
And talk a little bit about that partnership of getting to work with somebody that's such a free spirit and so open. What were the benefits of that for you?
Yeah, she is that. It was good. It was good to begin with, and I was just the guitar player, basically. She was picking all the music. So at that point, I didn't really have any music selection or necessarily leadership. Although the group, as it kind of is kind of leaderless. I mean, she is the main voice, vocal, but there isn't a worship leader in
Yeah.
what you would typically think of a worship leader. So I was just the guitar player.
So even Terry would say, I did one of these with her, that she has this, come one, come all spirit. And for the musician side of you and the music direction side of you and this side of you that wants to put forth a great offering, there's clashes there in terms of what you want in preparation and those kind of things. That model of doing worship and that model of essentially having a group that's really a choir more than anything. How did it push you to wanting to do something else?
Well, that model was fine for me for a while. And then it has, by its very nature, I think it has some limitations musically. In terms of what types of songs you're able to do. And so that was frustrating for me, I think, eventually. And the fact that there really wasn't a lot of accountability in the people that were coming. I mean, and I'm certainly applaud the, come one, come all. But when people would not show up on rehearsal nights and then expect to come in on Sunday morning and sing, I kind of had a problem with that. I mean, the commitment level was not as great as I would have hoped.
Yeah.
So I decided that rather than be a part of that that model, that I would start a smaller group of musicians that I knew and who felt similar to me in terms of the level of preparedness and quality that we were going to do on Sunday morning. And so, I had a keyboard, I had guitar, keyboard, and drums, and we did that for quite a while, and then decided we would expand a little bit and got a couple of vocalists, and you came in and did some other guitar stuff, and...
I got picked for the first time. I never get picked for these things, but I got picked this time.
Well, besides your guitar playing, it was your sterling personality, I think.
Usually that's the reason I don't get picked.
Oh, I see.
But even before the small ensemble, which we'll get to for sure, you have almost the ruining, I think, to some degree of your ability to kind of just soldier on in that model is you guys go and make this Broadway blues kind of group, and you get to really dive back into the music leadership, picking the songs, those things, and really flushing out arrangements and these things, and get to have this thing that is with such intentionality about the rehearsals, about the preparation of the music, and then get to have this experience at Roots and Blues in front of all these people where you get to be a free spirit because you're so prepared, and you get to have a much more authentic kind of worship. And talk about that experience a little bit.
That experience was amazing. That ranks right up in, one of several of my most amazing musical experiences. We did that 2 years. The first year was good. The second year was just phenomenal. And you're right. I mean, it was, a group of similarly skilled musicians who were committed to doing the best that we absolutely could do. And we rehearsed a long time, and it was amazing to have the performance so well ingrained in everybody that that day at Roots and Blues, it was fun. I mean, it's like, we're start the car, we're going and enjoy it. It was truly was amazing.
And you really got to do the deep dive. I mean, you picked the songs from year to year, and you got to make these huge playlists of all the potentials, right? And just like the joy in your face this year.
Absolutely. I love that. And in fact, I did some research on the perfect playlist, and it talked about, you need to start out at this, kind of this level. And then it needs, you need to have some peaks and you need to have some valleys during the course of your, however many songs are in your set. And kind of did that. I think the first year I had, an extensive list of songs and sort of asked the group to kind of vote on favorites and then kind of, narrowed it down from there. I think the second year I just picked the songs.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we're going to do the ones that I want to do and will be great. But yeah, being able to, do some arranging, write out some endings that we didn't have music for. And once again, I recorded the rehearsals, which was a big help. I was able to go back then and listen to all of those. And I think in fact, I maybe still had those on a hard drive someplace and kind of listened to some of those. So, it's certainly the majority of the people were folks from Broadway Christian, but we did bring in a couple, two or three, I think, more professional musicians to kind of fill in. We had an electric guitar player from St. Louis. We had Molly Healy played fiddle, and we had a banjo player that were just amazing, and were able to take solos during songs. And, that was a good experience.
It was really beautiful to get to watch you really be in your element. And also we kind of put a ceiling on ourselves sometimes of like, this is as good as we'll be able to do. And then you just see with all of that extra preparation, with all that intentionality for whatever you're working up towards, that ceiling can be shattered. You can far exceed that. And it definitely changed the way that I went about planning worship. But also, I mean, it really does sour the whole bucket when you have to go back after an experience like that and back to, a model that kind of is unstructured in some ways.
Yeah. For me, I think I really, really loved that experience. And in some ways, it was sad to know that that's probably not going to happen again. But I recognize the amount of work it took to get to that point. And were any of us, myself included, professional musicians that practice 10 hours a day, or, graduated from Berklee School of Music, or you're on the road all the time. Okay, well, that's what you expect. I mean, You're a professional. We weren't, but we got to a pretty high level, I thought. But it was a lot of work. And realistically, I don't have the time to do that. None of us did, really. So I think, yes, I think there was some frustration going back. But then, the small ensemble kind of fills that a little bit,
Yeah, and that model is very much structured on the intentionality. I mean, you think about these huge churches, right? And whether they're paying musicians or not paying musicians, the idea is that we're going to fit so much into formula, and here's the structure, and here's what we're doing, that I can take any guitar player and plug them into there. And the expectation is that you're prepared and ready to go, and so we don't have to go through 10 rehearsals because here's the structure. And there's some beauty to that idea, but it also strips the community piece out of it. It strips the spirit from being in the space when it's so formulaic and so structured. And what I really, really learned is to walk into the music not thinking about myself. Like, this is my part that I have to play. This is my whatever. And just be present with the song. And what are the things that I need to do to serve the song? What are the things I need to do to serve this worship? And it's not about my own thing. Because you've played enough music that you know when you're going into something, you're just thinking about, this is the thing that I do. You're oblivious to everything else that's happening. And, that corporate structure of worship, especially when it pertains to music and the kind of concert church sometimes, it's very detrimental. So this experience that you had with the band is very structured, but there's the community piece, right? You guys are all invested in all of these rehearsals. You're all invested in how to flush the songs out to make it what you need it to be. And then you're serving the song, but you're also serving each other.
Right. Yeah, and I think that, the mega church with the professional musicians or, rotating musicians in obviously works for them. But you're right. I mean, there is a sense of community. It's a small group. I mean, you're keeping up on each other's lives and supporting each other. And in the process of preparing the music and knowing each other, then you know each other in terms of the music, too. You know what everybody's capable of. You know what to expect. And everybody's got, everybody's got a piece in there, and they're doing their part. So that's good, too. It's not, maybe doesn't quite get up to the, the professional level that the Roots and Blues group did, but pretty darn good.
How much of that, though, is like when you're going into a situation and you're prepping for something as big as like that festival and, whatever this final thing is, and you have all of this time to prepare and structure things, how much of that final thing changes the way that you prepare? Because you know that it's going to be at this level, this expectation, versus like we're preparing for this worship 3 weeks out or something, and I know, that it's not going to get recorded at a professional quality level. And I know, does that change the preparation, or do you feel like no matter what it is, you're preparing the same?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I think with the Roots and Blues experience, I kind of had an idea of where we needed to be, and what it was going to take rehearsal-wise to get there. And I think that to a certain degree, I think that the same thing is true, if you're doing a 3-week cycle in church. I mean, you kind of know what your expectation is, and you gear the rehearsals to that. The first one you read through music and, figure some things out, and then, you go to the next rehearsal, and the third rehearsal is dress rehearsal, and you're ready to go. So,
okay, this is a tough question. We're entering the tough question piece. What is your most authentic moment that you remember leading worship? Like the moment that like everything else kind of just faded away, and you were like, this is God, this is Spirit, this is community, this is what it is.
Yeah, I don't know that I can name a specific Sunday. I do know that there have been Sundays where maybe not the entire selection of music, but a song or two that really spoke to me when I was looking for music, jumped out, said, you need to do me. And then we did it. And, I was pretty affected. You try not to break down because you still got stuff to do for the service. But there have been some moving moments of songs that we've done.
Yeah. I think what I love about this band is it's not all on me, in the sense that I don't have to carry the thing. and I don't have to drag everybody else along with me, because there is extra responsibility in that piece, and the extra responsibility sometimes prevents you from being fully present because you're worried about this. And especially in the kind of context of the way that I would lead worship is the music is the thing that drives all the worship, right? All the components are built around it. There's music under everything. And so you're very much charting the trajectory of the whole service, which is a lot of responsibility in that piece. But getting to play with this band, I'm responsible for my little piece, whatever that is. And there are times that I can sit back and not play sometimes and just kind of be in awe of the moment. But I remember we played, I have an arrangement of Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone, and we played that arrangement with the different words and the different stuff. And I think that's probably the most unstructured that we've ever done a song. Obviously, because, I was charged with leading that. So it was as free form as we've probably ever done a song. And I just remember in that moment, just like everybody, like everything was perfect. Like the moments that Zach came in with the pads and the keyboard was perfect. The way that you played subtle guitar in the different places, everything was perfect. The voices, everything. And it wasn't something that we had overly rehearsed. It wasn't something that we had nailed down. This is the measure that you enter here. It wasn't any of that. It was just like the spirit kind of flowing. And that's a trust that you can only get with all of the rehearsals and all of the time. I know what you're going to do.
Yeah.
I can imagine it, and I know you go into picking music that way. You're imagining what everybody would do in those different scenarios.
Yeah, I think another important component for me is trusting the rest of the group's opinions too. I mean, if you say, let's try this, I was like, okay, well, let's try this. And, if I've chosen the set for that Sunday, then more than likely I've got an idea of how I want the songs to go. But I'm open for other interpretations. I may not agree.
Yeah,
we may
of
not
course.
do it that way.
Yeah.
But, it's... and trusting other people being able to, in the group to be able to make suggestions and to be open to those.
I mean, churches all around are playing contemporary music. There's a migration to larger churches being very much concert church. And production quality is it's nuts, right? I mean, you go to these churches and, they have full video boards and, the lighting is nuts. And I mean, it doesn't necessarily feel like a sanctuary anymore. It feels like an arena to some degree. Your background is production. How does that serve how you lead in your expectations with the music piece of it? Or does it?
Well, I think, my approach to music and my wanting to do the music the best of my ability, and it's not going to be professional. It's not going to be a concert. It's not going to be produced like that, but it needs to be good. And there's no reason it can't be good. And so, I don't see, holding those churches and their production and their musicians and the music that they do, I don't see holding them as the ultimate goal to get to. But, I look at them and say, this is possible. We can do better than what we're doing.
Right.
We're not going to get up there because we're not spending all of the money on production and the personnel to be able to run the production. And I don't really want that. If that's what I wanted, I'd be going there.
Right.
And I'm not.
Right.
But, it's, we can do better. And we should. I go back to if the person standing up front delivering the message really is bad, how long are you going to be satisfied with that. I mean, it's a worship service. It's not a concert. You know, we're not performing. It's not, you know, a big production. And yet there is production value in what we're doing. And there's no denying that, you know, a minister standing up there who is really good at delivering the message that they're delivering isn't appealing. I mean, that, you know, we've all been in situations where the person delivering the message wasn't that good.
I mean, it does make a difference. I always would go about framing worship and planning worship. And, you know, luckily I had the freedom of we do this, and this, and this, and here are your places to plug in a song. It was never that. But it was always with this intentionality that music should drive the service and music should enhance at every turn. You know, you need those communication pieces, but the music is there to enhance. And it's a problem when the music and the production is wrapped in there, starts to distract away from the larger thing that you're doing. And when it's bad, it is a distraction. It's not an enhancement at all.
Right.
And sometimes it's better to not have music than to have music that's going to distract.
Yeah, and you know, that's people's definition and expectation of quality is different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, you know, what my expectation is, or what I would really like to see, is different than my wife's. You know, I would come home and say, well, you know, this, and this didn't happen or could have been better. And she's going, I didn't notice anything, you know. And her sister said, oh, I don't care. I mean, music is music. You know, and I recognize music is not the worship, but as you say, it enhances, or should enhance. So it's kind of a tricky question. It's like, you know, just because I think a certain way doesn't mean that's the only way to think, and doesn't necessarily mean that's the way it should be.
But there is a juxtaposition, because as technology advances, everything is more in our face. You look at 5-10 years ago, you know, you could see those environments of where, you know, of concert church, of really high, and I'm not saying concert church to diminish that, but high production, where production is valued over some of the more, you know, kind of humility-driven church of like, let's just be community. It's driven by the production value of that. We would see those, but it wasn't thrust in our face all the time. And then you come through the pandemic and people live streaming and those things, and also technology being everywhere in front of our face. Now you're constantly presented with images of people doing worship with high production, music with high production. And all that time that you were in your little community church, there was no juxtaposition with everything else, because this is where I go every Sunday and this is how we do it and this is what I see. And maybe I listen to contemporary Christian music on the radio, but that's on the radio, right?
Right.
But now we're being flooded with videos and images of how other people do church. And when your church is not in that space or in that place, and the production quality is not nearly as high, in your brain, you start to question things. It's just it's just natural of like, what are we doing? Are we worshiping? I mean, it's fair. It's a fair thing. And one of the things out of the pandemic I said was the worst thing that we could have done is, you know, for most places is stream, because I can always get something better, you know, but you know, from personal experience, there's nothing better than being in a room full of people that have vested interest in everybody lifting up voices. There's something special about it. I mean, I remember going to a song leader conference years ago, and Darlene Check from the original Hillsong came and sang, what was the song? Oh my gosh, my Jesus, Lord, that's not like you. Shout to the Lord.
Yeah.
Right. Super famous song. and you have 1,000 worship leaders in a room, and people are singing harmonies, and there's an a cappella chorus, and it's just like, this is it. This is what we're supposed to be doing, right? Like, this is praising in an authentic and genuine way, without the production, without any of the pieces. It's just us genuinely as a community lifting up praise.
Yeah.
No distractions. Not an instrument was playing. They weren't doing the crazy lights on stage. It was just like, let's have this genuine moment.
Yeah, and I've had a couple of those too. I went quite a while ago. Went to a conference in Kansas City, and Paul Balash did one of the evening services, and I mean, it was worship, and with 1,000 people sitting out there, and then did another one fairly recently. That was exactly like that. I mean, you've got worship leaders and musicians in the audience, and it was amazing. Yeah.
Okay, we're still in the tough questions. What makes the perfect worship leader?
Oh man.
There's no wrong answers.
Well, that's hard for me to answer because I don't really consider myself a worship leader in what you would traditionally think of as a worship leader. I mean, if you go online and you're looking at services and there's a worship leader, he's the dude that's out there a lot of times playing guitar, sometimes playing keyboard, and and they're actually leading. I mean, they're doing the patter between the songs. They're maybe doing a prayer or reading snippets of scripture, and then they're transitioning to the next song, and they're the worship leader.
Yeah.
And I don't really consider myself that. I mean,
I said that you couldn't do a wrong answer, but that's definitely the
well, I guess in a broader sense, yeah. I mean, I'm picking the music, I'm running rehearsals, but I don't. So I don't know. I don't know what perfect worship leader is.
Well, I mean, definitely not the Belmont University version of what a worship leader is, right? Because, that's a degree. You can get a worship leader degree now. But not that. But you just talked about, I mean, part of your definition of what makes a good worship leader is the stuff that you're talking about of like, I'm not that. I'm not that. This model that makes the worship about me.
Right.
Like, being front-facing isn't the component that makes you a worship leader, right? Because you can put any vocalist, any person, if that's the standard, then, the pastor can be the worship leader, you know what I mean? But the component of, like, humility and serving the ultimate worship, that's something that you exemplify in what you're talking about. The structuring and the intentionality behind framing the worship and the music, that's a huge component of worship leading. And at the end of the day, it all rests on your shoulders, right?
Well,
You're planning, you're arranging, and you're leading.
well, there are a few other people involved, so it's not just me. So I see what you're saying, and yeah, and I really do look at the music that I choose, that I help rehearse, and all of that, and try to and remind the rest of the people in the group, we aren't just playing music. Mm-hmm. We are leading worship. I don't consider myself the leader in terms of leading worship. I feel the group who's responsible for the music we're leading the music, which is a big component of worship for me. So we are all worship leaders.
Yeah. And that mentality makes a big difference. But also the structure changes. We kind of have zeroed in on this idea of what a worship leader is because, they exist in certain structures that are fit for that, right? And there's a lot of worship that aren't fit for that. That model of this is what a worship leader is, tight jeans and brand new sneakers and some type of jacket. jean jacket or leather jacket, you know, right? But like in reality, I think there's different ways to do it, and there's different settings that it's appropriate. I remember, you know, we're very much in that free-flowing kind of worship, you know, for the worships I used to lead. And to take some of the responsibility off of me, I used to write down what we called sacred blah blah for transitional phrases and things to say in between. And I used to write them out and assign them to members of the band.
Yeah.
And that's something that I would just naturally, you know, but to take some of it off of me and make it less about myself, it's like, okay, you may not have the capacity to just free flow this off the top of your head. So here's it written out for you, and you get to have some of the responsibility. And it was really, really powerful to get to watch them step into some of those places where they were like, I don't have the skills or the gifts to do that, or that's not my thing. I can't do that. For them to have some of the barrier taken away and then get to do that and be like, wow,
Yeah.
that was really cool. And I felt like this was, you know, for this song in the set, like I felt like I was running the show.
Yeah, and I don't really feel comfortable doing that
Yeah.
in between songs, that pattern in between songs. You know, I think I still have the sheet that I wrote out for, we did it was a combined single service. This has been a number of years ago. And I wanted to explain sort of what we were going to be doing in terms of the songs, and that, you know, it was going to be a little old, a little new, and, you know, welcoming everybody and inviting them to join us as we lead by doing these songs. Well, I mean, I wrote that all down so that I could look at my music stand and read it, because I'm not going to, you know, just do it off the cuff. But once again, I think, you know, sort of what I think of as the worship leader model, I don't consider myself that. In terms of leading music in a worship service, being responsible and doing all of that, then yeah, I guess so. But I don't know what makes a good one. I guess I recognize ones that aren't so good when I see them. But.
There we go. Well, maybe a good worship leader is one that doesn't stick out like a sore thumb.
There you
know?
go.
There we go. I like it. There's only a couple moments that I can remember getting like a death stare from you, which is a thing. So sometimes I would lead the ensemble when Terry was gone or whatever. And my gifts are not, I'm not the person who's going to sit down on the piano and read out all the sheet music and play all the vocal parts and stuff. Like, that's not my jam. I'm not going to do that. I can structure a song. I've learned to be able to work my way through measures and sheet music and the whole thing, but it's all gibberish to me anyway. So in the moments that I would lead, it was a whole kind of different thing. It was a little bit more free-flowing, and maybe we did that in some component, but it was really me just adding to the thing versus me like taking over a thing. There was never going to be a Sunday where it's like, oh, I'm the piano player this Sunday. It's like, no, I'm the second piano player this Sunday, right? And I remember like during Advent one time, leading a worship from the front, and I'm playing in the time before the prelude, and I'm just fiddling. And then I see it's starting to snow outside, and I'm like, okay. And I start playing like Let It Snow or something like that. And then I start playing the Christmas song and all this stuff. And like, you're like looking at your watch, and you're like, it's time for us to start the prelude now. And you're looking at me, and you're staring a hole through the back of my head like, okay, guy, your concert's over. It's done. It's time for us to start. And I look back at a video of it, and I was like, why didn't he just play something? Just start cut me off. But I appreciate the ability for you to always just kind of let me be me and like do my own thing. And obviously there's times that rein it in, but very much allow me the freedom to like not feel like I'm being judged all the time or not feel like I might have to fit in some particular box, but let me figure it out. And I appreciate that from you because, you know, you got rough edges sometimes.
Well,
that's the rumor about you.
Yeah, and all these rumors. I didn't realize. You know, Michael, I love the stuff that you do, and I think it's great. You know, the rub comes when more people need to be playing with you, and you're, you know, doing
Off
your
in La La Land.
yeah, and which is great. I mean, I love you off in La La Land. You know, it's just I can't play with you in La La Land because I don't know where you're going. So, you know, but I think we, you know, in those times we're able to, you know, figure that out. Give me some chords and let me know where you're going, and I'm happy.
See, the problem, Tom, is I don't always know where I'm going. It's the jazz in me. It's the, you know, my great grandfather was a disc jockey in Chicago and then moved to St. Louis and was a disc jockey. So all of his records are like all these old blues, old jazz stuff. I just really grew up in this place of like jazz and jazz fusion and those kind of things. And it's like, you know, I see sevenths and diminished and dominants, and it's just colors and
I love
stuff,
that.
you know?
I mean, I'm a huge jazz fan, and as I said earlier, you know, I played in a jazz band, played trumpet, did solos. You know, all of those, you know, those nuanced chords are great. You know, it's just we all kind of need to know what those chords are going to be, so that. You know, or we have to say, okay, Michael, you're on your own for, you know, 16 bars, and then you've got to come back.
Land the plane.
Yeah. Okay.
I love it. I love it. Hard questions, right? What makes the perfect worship song?
Well, that is a hard question. I don't know that I've really thought about that intentionally. I mean, you know, songs, as I'm looking for songs for a service, you know, I'll have a theme or a scripture passage that's going to happen that Sunday. So I've got those as kind of guidelines, and I'll start looking at several different sources for you know, what they consider as themes, but ultimately it's got to light something in me, and I kind of feel like it isn't all about me. But if I've got to present it and, in essence, sell it to the rest of the group and say, you know, we got to do this song. It's got to do something for me. You know, I really have always been more of a music kind of guy than a lyrics kind of guy, you know, so the music's really got to do something for me. And obviously the lyrics are what are going to tie into the theme. And, you know, there are some worship songs that, you know, have one verse and one chorus that are repeated endlessly, and those don't really do much for me. There are worship songs that have, you know, half a dozen modulations. That really doesn't do anything for me. I'm not a big modulation kind of guy. But I don't know. And it, you know, there are songs that are upbeat, really exciting, hard driving worship songs that are really exciting. And there are, you know, we've done really slow ballads that are just beautiful. So I don't know. I think for me, the music hits me first. I mean, if I listen to a tune and the music really speaks to me, then, you know, I'll see if the lyrics.
Yeah.
do it. But
Well, there's like this interesting dichotomy of what worship music used to be, and very much, what we kind of make fun of is those, those four chords repeated over and over again, but very much structured in the way that that popular music was structured, right? With an A section, B section, and a C section, and structured in a really verse, chorus,
you're done.
Yeah, every once in a while we'd have a bridge,
You have a bridge,
structured in that kind of way. And then now you look at the landscape of music, and very much sometimes it's like this free flowing. Are these verses? Where's the chorus? What is the thing? Are we going to repeat this thing 50 times? And how much of that is genuine music piece, and how much of it is just like emotional manipulation for music, right? It feels like sometimes productions are. But then I get proved wrong. We play that song, I don't know how to say it, Jira, or what's the song that we played? By the song that we played the last time I played with you guys that Zach led, by Jonas or Jonah or...
Oh, yeah.
We played a new song that's very much kind of, the borders are much freer than something else.
Yeah.
And
that was a great tune.
It's easy to take that at face value and just be like, this is emotional manipulation, right? The production, everything is like reverb heavy and all this stuff. It's supposed to make you feel something, but we recreate it in a space, and it felt very special.
Yeah, and that I was going to say. I mean, that there's an instance of where Zach found the tune, and we all listened to the recording, and I mean it's great, but that wasn't us. So we were able to take it and make it work for us. So yeah, that was a good tune.
I love the idea that there are all these different artists on all the fringes that are not so much concerned anymore with how do I write the perfect worship song. And so then we don't have, as much as it used to be, a flood of like, this song got hot, and so let's have 100 versions of that exact same thing, right? And I think it makes picking music a little bit easier or harder because there's more stuff out there in various styles.
Right.
But where do you see worship music going?
I don't know. That's a good question. And that song, Jonah, I think is the artist that did that. And I listened to a lot of his other songs when we decided we'd do that one. And there really weren't many others that spoke to me particularly. And I think there are always going to be those artists. There's always going to be sort of the mainstream contemporary Christian artists. I think there are more of them now than there used to be, but
it's big business.
Yeah, it is.
$500 million a year.
Yeah. But I don't know. And I think that the field is pretty wide open, and the fact that this contemporary worship music has been going for a while now gives you a lot of flexibility in finding songs. I mean, there are, this song by Jonah that I'd never heard, but is very much contemporary. I mean, it's out there. Or, the Michael W. Smith is still around, and, Paul Balash is still doing stuff, and We the Kingdom. And I mean, a lot of the songs that we've picked, they're groups that are actively recording right now. And you've got the Darlene Check, era where, and those songs are still, a lot of them, some of them are dated, but, a lot of them are still viable. And, you can take those and, update the music a little bit, make it your own. So,
I mean, it presents so many interesting opportunities. You think of, Tomlin, and you think of, I know you have your personal beliefs and feelings about Tomlin, but you think of like Amazing Grace, My Chains Are Gone, like a song like Amazing Grace, it's not really going anywhere, but how many people want to raise their hand and say, I want to sing Amazing Grace in this hymn format in church? probably not a ton of people. There's certain traditionalists that would love that idea, but there's lots of us that would say it's a beautiful thing. Love the lyrics, love the tune. No interest in singing that
Right.
in church. But you take it and you present it in different clothes, tweak the melody a little bit, and then add a really good chorus. It becomes a whole other thing.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit of that actually out there, I think. Jaden Levick has a couple of albums of hymn tunes that he's really updated.
Crowder's done it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you're right. I mean, you take a traditional hymn, you use as much of the tune as you want, and you update it, and you add a chorus, and suddenly it's Amazing Grace, my chains are gone. So
it's a whole other thing. To all of those people that are not fans of church music, resembling at all worldly music that's in pop culture, what do you have to say to that?
The what now?
To the people that don't think that church music should resemble the music of our culture.
Well, I'd say that church music has changed and reinvented itself since probably church music began. So it's always changing with, the times. And I've got Spotify lists that have, ancient music, world music, choral music, organ music. I mean, I love it all.
Yeah.
And contemporary, So I think I would hope that people would be open to new things, new forms of music. I certainly understand if they've got what they like and that's what they want to listen to. And I don't know. It's an awfully personal thing, I think.
What responsibility do you, as this person that's served in church music for all of these years, what responsibility do you have to the next generations to pass on knowledge and wisdom and information, or do you have a responsibility?
Well, I don't know. That's an interesting question. I don't know at this point in what I'm doing church music-wise that I have much of an opportunity. Back when, several years ago when High Rise was going, I felt like, again, I think that, picking good music and encouraging the members of the group to do the best that they can possibly do and encouraging them to try to get better was important. I don't really feel like I've got that opportunity at this point.
Well, you've definitely done the leadership thing at some point, but I think you're modeling the thing, the spirit-driven intentionality of the way that you lead. I think that's certainly the component that you're giving every time that you have the opportunity, right? Is there a career for you next, a new life for worship music, where you start to use all of this wisdom and this music over all the years and you start to write? Is that your third act in worship music?
I won't say never, but it just hasn't. I've thought about that. It just doesn't. I like interpreting other people's stuff.
Are you familiar with D'Angelo, the artist? Okay, that's one that you go back and listen to. He's great. But all of his albums were really conceived by having this great group of musicians in the same room. and jamming out on their favorite like Funkadelic records and some other, Michael Jackson records and other different records. And then in the jamming out, they'd come up with B sections and C sections and different interpretations. And those are what created the tracks that ultimately got written to and became the songs.
Wow.
It was playing other music that they were passionate about and just jamming out on people's tracks, and taking that Paul Bullish song that you love and just jamming and jamming and jamming until you naturally create the part that's not there and it turns into something else, My favorite story of all worship is Paul Bullish saying, we had a technical difficulty or something happening in worship and we just needed to fill the time. And I felt like people needed an invitation to come and be in the space and to enter the presence of God. And so just naturally we started singing and saying, "Open the eyes of my heart, God." And then that becomes the song that served millions and millions of people out of a pure, authentic worship moment. And I don't know, I think you got a little Paul Bullish in you.
Well, I'd be okay with that.
Well, there's definitely a resemblance now.
That's true.
Well, thank you for the model that you've been for me for all these years from the very first time that I saw you. And I knew that I could be a person that took music seriously. That was the first time that I ever been in worship and got to see somebody that was not just passionate, but intensely intentional about what they were doing in a music context. Because it's easy to be the person that's passionate and just flailing about and just let the Spirit move me, and but to be the person that's holding the whole thing together, and to prepare the way that you do, and to put as much time and energy into picking things and making sure that you're serving the ultimate group and then ultimately God, that's been a model for me for all the years. And I got to be bad guy in bands, because I knew it wasn't a bad thing. Tom's a great guy. And the rumors aren't true. Tom's a great guy. And I got to tell people, it's not about you. And you weren't here for this rehearsal, and you're not prepared, and you're not gonna play with us because you're not prepared. And there'll be another opportunity. Sunday's always coming.
Right.
And next time you'll be more prepared. But this time you're not ready, and we're not gonna have one person distract from the whole thing that's ultimately serving. And for you giving me the model and the encouragement to be that person when I needed to be that person, but also the freedom to be me in the frame of the Wick Tremors. I appreciate you.
Well, thanks, Michael.
Yeah. And I look forward to that next song that you write.
You keep waiting.
But for all of you, thank you so much for tuning in. It's been a side-by-side podcast, and you're going to want to stick around at the end of this one.
We gotta work on the problems. We gotta link up to solve them. We gotta keep on evolving. Gotta be side by side. Give it up. Gotta be side by side. Everyone. Gotta be side by side. Yeah. We gotta be side by side. Gotta be side by side. We gotta be side by side.
Every battle, every heartbreak, every circumstance, I believe you are my fortress, you are my portion, you are my hiding place. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the You are protected. You are the one I love. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are. It's a new horizon, and I'm set on you. And you lead me here today with mercies that are new. All my fears and doubts, they can all come true, because they can't stay long when I'm here with you. It's a new horizon, and I'm set on you. And you lead me here today with mercies that are new. All my fears and doubts, they can all come true, because they can't stay long when I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are. It's a new horizon, and I'm set on you. And you meet me here today with mercies that are new. All my fears and doubts, but they can all come true, because they won't stay long when I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are the way, the truth, the life. I believe you are. Oh, I believe you are. I want Jesus, walk with me. I want Jesus, walk with me. All day long, my pilgrim's journey. I want Jesus, walk with me. When I'm in trouble, walk with me. When I'm in trouble, walk with me. When my heart is almost breaking, I want Jesus, walk with me. Well, in my trials, walk with me. My trials, Lord, walk
coming on the rain.
Hear a sound,
Whisper on the wind.
sounds like the spirit calling out my name. It's calling to me in the morning, and it's coming to me in my sleep. It says, hey boy, lay down these worthless things. Let me give you something you can keep. Did you wear a crown?
Was the devil laughing?
Did you wear a crown?
And was the curtain torn?
Thunder pound.
Did heaven look away?
Did you wear a crown, and was it made of thorns? It's calling to me in the morning, and it's coming to me in my sleep. It says, hey, lay down all these foolish things. Let me give you something you can keep. Lord, did you go down?
And take on the devil
Lord, did you go down?
to hell for the key.
Buried in the ground.
Then did you rise up